This is Via Voices, the podcast that brings you insights from the champions of international education. I'm your host, Brooke Roberts, and together we'll uncover the stories behind impactful global learning experiences and the professionals who make them possible. Building a globally engaged campus takes vision, strategy, and a deep commitment to access, and Jill Blondin delivers on all three.
One of the imperatives at our institution is to double the number of international students by 2028. So one way we measure success is by the increase in number of students, but it's not just about the metrics there. It's also about rising up to have the support services that will make those students successful.
As Vice Provost for Global Initiatives at Virginia Commonwealth University, she led the creation of VCU Global, a living learning community recognized by NAFSA for campus innovation, and expanded international opportunities across disciplines. Her goal? To ensure all VCU students can benefit from a global experience, on campus, online, or around the world. Hi, Jill. Welcome to the Via Voices podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on it.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you're a superstar. Everybody knows who Jill Blondin is. So we introduced you already, but you don't really need an introduction at all. So here's the thing. I don't really know your story. I don't really know how you got into international education as a career.
Yeah.
Walk us through that experience.
Do you have 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, it's a really good question because I think that like our origin stories are so interesting. Yeah. When I start talking about my story, I always say I'm an art historian. I went to graduate school in art history, and my story sort of begins back when I was an undergraduate. I remember a friend of mine telling me she was getting ready to study abroad in Florence, and I thought to myself, what a great idea. I would like to do that. I don't know how you do that. I guess that's just not for me. Oh. And so I always say I didn't study abroad as an undergraduate. The furthest I could dream was to intern in Washington, D.C. And then as a graduate student in art history, I realized that nobody worth their salt as an art historian hadn't seen the Pantheon, hadn't been to the Sistine Chapel or gone to the National Gallery in London. Yeah. And so I traveled abroad and then studied abroad after my first year in graduate school. And at that point, I made it my mission. I said, if I am ever in a position as a faculty member, I am going to open up the world just as I had my world opened up by the study abroad experience. Mm-hmm. Then fast forward through my doctoral studies, I had studied in Vienna. I was studying German. Us art historians all need to be able to read German. And then I also lived in Rome for an academic year where I conducted my dissertation research in the Vatican Library. Wow. And when I became a faculty member in Texas, I was at the University of Texas at Tyler. The first thing I did started in 2002, and I developed a faculty-led study abroad that did not follow best practices. In Italy. Yeah. I laugh now about how I negotiated the contracts myself. But anyway, one faculty member for 30 students. I mean, it was crazy. And I launched it in 2005, and I was sort of off to the races at that point. Art history by its very nature is international. So I was already primed to do that. Yeah. After a few years at UT Tyler, they were introducing internationalization as this imperative, as an initiative, as part of their reaccreditation process. And they tapped me to help lead that. Okay. And I took the chance, moved away from faculty. I always joke that I had the best life. I worked 9 months. I had 3 small children, and we spent the summers in, I spent the summer in Italy. Yeah. Why would I take on a 12-month role? Right. But I did. I eventually centralized international efforts at UT Tyler, became their SIO, and then left in 2013 to lead the global education program VCU Globe at VCU, and then eventually became the SIO starting in 2018, first as interim. And that's how I am where I am today, and it's all been motivated by my passion for international experiences, my sort of student-first approach, and the belief that we're better when we've experienced the world because we're flexible, adaptable, and much more culturally agile. Mm-hmm. We're just kinder. Yeah. So that's my story, and that's really what motivates me.
That's great. I love it. I didn't know you came from the faculty world.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you're like hanging out with us administrators over here.
Well, if you would like me to translate some Latin, I'm happy to do it. And so
that's great.
Yeah.
At VCU now, you guys are, it seems like you're always on the forefront of doing something really cool. I met you through Podium Education. So you guys do the Global Career Accelerator there, which is so cool. But I'm curious, just largely under your guys as SIO, how are you measuring success? What are the things you're looking for to know we did it right this year?
Yes. Okay. That's a really, really great question. So one of the imperatives at our institution is to double the number of international students by 2028. So one way we measure success is by the increase in number of students, but it's not just about the metrics there. It's also about rising up to have the support services that will make those students successful. So we're also trying to expand programming. And for me, that also involves the entire university community. And what I mean is that I feel very strongly as the SIO that we don't duplicate any services in our office that can be found elsewhere. We don't have the time or the resources. So what that really means is that I'm profoundly collaborative. And so in order to deliver those services, we have to work across the institution. In order to increase the number of international students, we work across the institution. And also we measure obviously by the number of students who study abroad and trying to increase that, but also trying to align with the interests of the institution. What that oftentimes means is that there might be strategic priority areas. We haven't had a lot of students, for instance, who've studied abroad in India. We have a lot of students who come to study with us from India. But when you think about the opportunity there, it can't be one-sided. And so we have some grants that we have a call for proposals annually now, one in the partnership space and one for global learning. We indicate priority areas, which include geographic areas like India, to try to encourage faculty to do that. So another measure for us is the success and the follow-on of the grants that we give out annually. Usually we give out about 10 or more, depending on funding and requests and that sort of thing. And so faculty engagement is also a measure. What we also think about, and I often say that compliance can drive innovation. Compliance is fundamental to our success. And Immigration Services lives in my office, and I work very closely with our PDSO and his team, and we measure the number of I-20s that we're issuing, and obviously also the accuracy of said I-20s. But we also look at our yield numbers, applications, offers accepted. So there are a whole host of ways that we measure that. And we look at qualitative data too, when we measure our study abroad programming. But we are also trying to increase, we look at the open doors data that's available. That helps us see the trends. So we align with what the institution needs. Database, we know where we need to grow in faculty-led, for instance. That's where we're going to see that increase for the students at VCU.
A couple of things you mentioned there about not duplicating the services in your office, like creating a little mini university in your office. I think that's a really smart approach or observation, because I feel like just the nature of preparing other offices on campuses to work with international students, let's say, or returning study abroad students is an internationalization activity in and of itself, right? I remember when I was in grad school, I was like, we need to I worked in residence life as well as study abroad. And I was like, we have all these international students coming in. They also need to understand that some of the cultural dynamics that, we can't always predict, but how to manage it when it shows up. They started doing like an international training, basically. And bringing in the international office and to lead the training so they can be like, this is what they're facing. This is what they've gone through to get here.
Exactly.
All sorts of things. And I just thought, oh my God, those, 120 RAs, most of them are probably not going to study abroad, as we know. Right. But they now had this really cool international education, even if it's small,
Exactly. And for us, we offer something called global zone training, which helps faculty. It sort of prepares faculty to work with international students to be more interculturally agile and to also understand the services that we offer through the Global Education Office. And the shift that I've seen for us has been, we offer these, a wonderful service such as that, but it also is rooted in for us, moving away from the transactional into the transformational for the institution, and thinking about, I think of the Global Education Office as providing services, but also providing a lot of thought leadership. So we work with faculty on grants, which we support. We work very closely with our Office of Research and Innovation. So we try to take this holistic view that necessarily involves collaboration. I mean, that's what we are. We don't own anything. Again, to your point about a mini institution, we don't need a little international VCU.
Yeah.
What we need is to collaborate and all work together to support our students and faculty.
You also brought up compliance, being critical to just maintaining your existence in a lot of cases. At VIA, that was a big reason why we developed our VIA International product to service ISSS, because compliance is so important.
Yes.
And that real-time data, direct communication with CVIS became so important. I'm curious, outside of that specifically, what kind of data collection are you using to, I guess, shore up support on your campus, or basically showcase why international is so valuable to VCU?
We do use Teradata for our education abroad, both our applications, but also surveying and our data collecting. We use Synapsys for and CVIS, obviously, as communication mechanisms through Synapsys, but also for data collecting. We also work really closely with our strategic enrollment management and student success, as well as our institutional research and decision support, so that we have accurate data. We're using the institutional data. Sometimes I see this, especially at a big institution like mine, but at others too, where sometimes you can see that you have to have a trusted data collecting source, because everyone needs, because it's obviously not good to misreport, but even worse than that is to then base your initiatives or the work you're doing off of inaccurate data. Yeah. So I think it's really incumbent, again, for us to be working across the institution in that space to report that data. We know F1 students, but our J's and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm relatively new to VIA, but I've worked in the tech side for a long time, and that single source of truth, that concept, and what we've realized too is that we have to be able to talk to the single source. But technology needs to be able to talk to the single source of truth, so that it's, again, bidirectional, can always be instantaneous and at your fingertips. So that, for instance, I was talking to another SIO and they were talking about being able to, within 4 clicks, be able to run a report to say who's where, who's doing what, the interest they've had in certain destinations around the world, and just being able to hand that to the president and be like, look, whatever data point they can share that shows their impacts. Yeah.
And shows where you should go.
Right, exactly.
Or where you aren't.
Yeah,
and I think that for us too, we also have and again, I certainly don't want to bore listeners, but let me talk
Stay with us.
Stay with us. I'm about to talk about the International Travel Advisory Committee, which I co-chair with our with risk management. But also we track when faculty and students are traveling to level 3 countries, we do a travel review to ensure that everybody is prepared for going abroad and to conduct research. And I also we work very closely with export controls. Yeah. So there are a number of ways that we have that entry point within compliance, but there's always room for improvement.
Right now in international ed, we're facing a lot of challenges, confusion. As well. Is there a particular issue right now that's at the forefront of your mind that you're most concerned about?
I would say I'm not sure there's an issue, but there is a demand for us not to be so reactive. So I would say just broadly, because I'm thinking of leadership broadly, and I know that we have to, get down to brass tacks and make sure that we're addressing specific issues. But what I would just say is I think it's incumbent on us to continue to show strong leadership and support for the initiatives and to believe in the work we do, which is very important. Also, one thing we oftentimes say in immigration services, we'll say we don't give guidance based on no guidance. I think that you could extrapolate that to say we're going to continue to do the good work we do, but we're not going to catastrophize or borrow worry. I mean, we don't, or borrow trouble. We don't need to be doing that. What we need to be doing is stay student focused, keep doing the good work that we're doing, ensure the buy-in at the highest level of our institution. And really it comes down to communication, both to my team, but also again to the president and the provost. We want to make sure that, as always, we're providing those experiential learning opportunities for students, both here and abroad.
I really love that idea of not being reactive all the time and just sort of like taking a beat.
Yes.
And relying more on like what is actually happening versus what we think could happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. You deal with what's in front of you. And the other thing that I would say to that is, I mean, anyone who knows me knows I'm not the most calm person. That's understatement of the year.
Yeah.
And so for me to be saying that, but I'm sincere in saying it, which is that it really is an opportunity for us. We also want our teams to be productive. And we need to be modeling the kind of steady leadership that we need in any time.
Yeah.
But for us to just look at what's being asked of us, look what we're being charged to do at our institutions. And then, again, being as student-centered as we always have been.
Right. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk more about the professional career development side.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have a really interesting path going from, probably tenure track faculty,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Into more administrative work, which many people do.
Yes.
But I'm just curious. It's just you're taught a different skill set. To be a successful faculty member, there's a way to do it, right?
Absolutely.
And then to be successful in administration, there's this another way. It's another
Yes.
set of skills in
Yes.
some ways. What was the most valuable professional development experience you had to help you with that transition from faculty thinking to administrative thinking? Not to say that they have to be mutually exclusive.
No, and they're not. I talk about how much being an art history is economics, it's history, it's it's politics, it's economics. And so really I have a really broad, and I often joke I'm a trained intellectual assassin because I'm an art historian. I can come into a meeting and question everything. So I was a little like Dorothy. I had everything there I needed all along.
Yeah.
I just, and so that's sort of interesting to me is, I also was responsible for communicating my success. As a faculty member, it was lonely because you were your own PR person, researcher, writer, lecture presentation preparer, and that kind of thing, grader. And so the transition then into administrator wasn't as, at least initially, challenging as I thought. In fact, I actually found the opposite, which is that I really was able to use some skills that I had not had previously, or that I wasn't aware that I had as a faculty member. So it was kind of refreshing moving into administration. But for me, the best professional development opportunities I've had is as I've made, I would say, when I made the transition, I was a little thrown in the deep end. And so, which was good. It was, I emerged. I didn't drown. And, I
didn't die.
I didn't die. I was fine, and, but I think that really for me, what happened is I went to Virginia from Texas, when I was purely administrative. There were some key experience that I had. One was ACE has a Virginia network of women's leaders, and institutions are able to nominate some emerging, female faculty or staff. And that was a year-long, experience in which I was paired with a mentor. You do those inventories where you learn your strengths.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I have no humility. And which is, something. Yes.
I'm shocked. News alert. Yes.
So it was, but so it was actually a really good experience in self-awareness. That whole year that I did that, and that was really wonderful. The other thing has been through AIA. I would say that the peer learning circle, while designed as learning from peers, that was a complete game changer in my career because I was paired with 5 people who, were also at large publics. We were part of the first cohort. They launched in 2020. The SIO position can be a lonely one. And I was about to say that about faculty. Faculty can be a lonely position because, like I said, you're your own PR person, you're your, stuff like that. So I was used to that. But in the wake of COVID, having been paired through AIA with these 5 colleagues, we were able to share a lot of our, concerns, run ideas by each other, relate, we obviously related to what was happening. And then what emerged was support for each other. And so while it was supposed to be just a 4-month, obligation, I almost 5 years later, we still meet monthly. We all collaborate. I've co-edited a book with one of my colleagues. I work with one of them. I have, like I said, co-written, done a number of presentations, and I just cannot imagine. I can't imagine what my career would have done without the support, which was by AIA, and of course the presidential fellows. Being a presidential fellow, both as a mentee, but then I've learned as much as a mentor. So I also think that's part of it too, is having a real growth mindset and just being. I always tell people, the key to staying young and the secret to life is curiosity.
Yeah.
It's not more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And so if I approach my day, sometimes that's hard to do, but most days when you think about all the learning I'm going to do,
yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. Well, and I think about you're talking about that cohort of peers and colleagues and you just maintain that connection. It reminds me of a quote or a saying from Dave, our CEO at VIA, all the time. I feel like he says this in every meeting, which it's a great reminder. And he's like, one of us is not as smart as all of us. And I was just like, why exist in a silo when that colleague over there might already have the answer?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I think that's wonderful because it's true. I have a great team at BCU. They are all smarter than I am, but we are all smarter together.
Yeah. So I want to do a couple more rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So first I'm going to ask window or aisle?
Aisle all day, every day.
Okay. There's been no window yet, so
there's no window. Some people really like the window. I will admit that I drink a lot of tea, and so I prefer the
direct
aisle.
access.
Yes, I need the access.
Yeah. What's the last book that you read, and how did it influence how you see the world?
Oh, that's so funny. So I will tell you that I think I have read a couple books since then, but the one that is sticking out to me was I actually listened to it. I listened to to Barbara Streisand's memoir.
Oh wow, I love this. Okay, this is new.
I'm a huge Barbara fan.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of the actual memoir?
What is her? Oh my gosh, it should be. I can't even remember.
Funny Girl or something.
Yes, it must be something like that. But it's like almost 1,000 pages. It is full of wisdom about life. It is so wonderfully and written, and it's a journey of a woman who. Who's had various, changes in her career, has done things, has made decisions, has really been the architect of her life in a really meaningful way, has a lot of agency. And I really admire, not just the talent, which is extraordinary, but also the humane side. And there's a lot of vulnerability in that, in her memoir that I really, really admire. So
I put Barbara Streisand in the same caliber as a Dolly Parton.
Yes.
Where it's trailblazers.
Yes.
I'm doing my thing.
Yes.
And I don't care if you tell me to sit down and shut up.
Yes. There's so many. It's really interesting. I think how much we can learn, from people's lives and people sharing, and I would say free knowledge.
Yeah. No, wonderful. I love it. That's the first memoir I think that's come up.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah. So I want you to dream a little bit. Okay. And I want you to imagine a world where there's no technological, financial, geographic limitations, and you could solve one problem in international education, what would it be?
That is a wonderful question. If I could solve one problem in international education,
snap your finger.
If I could just snap my fingers and solve one problem, it would be so I would want all students to be able to self-actualize, and that could mean studying wherever they wanted, and being able to get a job after.
Okay, I like it. Like, so you automatically get a job, a good job you like, not underemployed.
You get to study where you want. If it would be a student from the U.S. who wanted to study, let's say in Denmark, you've got it. And then you've got a job after. If it's an international student coming from India, they come to the U.S., they get the job they want to. So I would love for people to have the careers they wanted. And jobs and money. It's really easy.
I love it. All right. So finally, I wanted to learn, pay it forward a little bit. There's probably a lot of people out there listening. Maybe there's even some, faculty member who are like, I kind of like the idea of maybe getting into the SIO world and the international education world. What's a piece of advice you'd give them if they want to be in your job someday?
Oh, that's such a good question. What I would say is, and a lot of people are going to say network, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to say network meaningfully. And what I mean is look for people who, expand your network, but they're also look for people who, you can bounce ideas off of, you can be vulnerable with, you can not know. And be yourself, be authentic. I find that you don't have to have some crazy executive presence to get ahead. What you have to do is believe in what you're wanting to do, love the work, which can be hard at times, but be yourself. That to me, networking, everyone's going to say that and do it. But really, be your authentic self. It's okay. And in fact, I think that not only will your life be more fulfilling, but you will have the opportunity, I think, to grow professionally in ways that you didn't know if you're bringing your own authentic self. And finally, I would say part of that is have a sense of humor. Things are funny.
I know. I would agree. I feel like sometimes our work is serious and important, but we don't have to take it so seriously.
Bring joy to what we're doing. So
exactly.
Please have a sense of humor.
It reminds me of just earlier at the luncheon. I think of like Amir Reza, the outgoing president. Shout out Amir. And he is like the king of the pun, king of the dad joke, right?
Yes.
But if you didn't know him and you just saw the professional facade and up there giving the speeches, you'd think like, oh, it's got to be serious when I'm talking to Amir. But it's like, and then when somebody stood up and they made a joke about his dad jokes, I just was like, yes, that's the personality. Like clearly it's shining through, and it's not just to me, it's not just to you. People get to know him for who he really is, and it doesn't discredit him in any way. Right?
No, to me, it's connection. To me, it's about relationship building and connection. So I'll just quickly say, a year ago, I was honored and very, very honored to be given the IIE SIO of the Year award.
I know. I was going to bring that up, but I didn't want to embarrass you.
Like I said, I like humility. I like humility, so I'm just going to go. But in all seriousness, the reason that I bring it up is because Stephanie Tigner, who is our director of global learning at VCU, gave some remarks that were amazing. And one of the things that she said, and she'd also included it in the nomination letter, was that, when she was talking about, these things Jill should get this for this reason. But when she was giving her remarks, she talked about my sense of humor as a diplomatic tool. And so it's genuine. I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, sometimes I am. And sometimes I fail spectacularly. But I mean, the truth is that I've really reflected on what she said, and she's right. She, when you have a sense of humor, and she said this, so I'm sort of paraphrasing, you do bring your best self to work when you're surrounded by people who see that. So it's going to put people at ease. People aren't scared. And so to me, it is a tool in the best possible way, so that everyone's enjoying their work. You're bringing joy and you're getting stuff done because we're just us and we're all learning.
Yeah. It's like, why slog through another day when you could be having fun? Yeah.
So that's one of the most meaningful things I've read, because I thought after all these years of being funny, it's finally paid off. Just kidding. I'm joking.
Well, that's a wonderful way to close. Thank you so much, Jill, for being on the podcast and taking the time to be here with us. I really appreciate it.
I am honored. I am absolutely honored.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.